Hello there, Talkin Fight fans. Thank you once again for joining us for another episode of The Scoop featuring the champ, Bola Ray. How you doing tonight, champ?
Uh, can't complain, just living the dream.
Like the rest of us. Awesome.
You know, with that, today, in my continuing, I'm continuing on in my ongoing series of greats that Roy Jones Jr. beat. That made him, in my eyes, the greatest middleweight, super middleweight, and light heavyweight of all time. The reality is that there are other fighters in history that have a more impressive record, per se. Well, not at the time of Roy. Roy was great, but would have amassed far more wins. But the question, who did he beat and who they beat? Now, that's the question. That's what makes you a champion, at least, actually, a legend in my eyes. Roy beat greats, actual legends, full stop. This is an opportunity for me to showcase just how many of these greats actually were, and today's boxing kings is no different. Today I'm talking about a troubled youth. Not like yesterday's troubled youth, but just as troubled. Um, he was no stranger to the streets or street fights from well before his teen years. Uh, as a youth that his family grew up with alongside, literally alongside, of Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Buster Matheson. A fighter who, in his 92 professional boxing fights, he only had 10 losses.
Wow.
And none of them came the way of stoppage. He moved up from middleweight to heavyweight, never grew taller, just rounder, stronger, and never got stopped. Who, to make ends meet for a period of time, actually sold crack cocaine? Yeah, why not? he is he is genuinely one of my all-time favorite kings of the ring, and is no other than, my name is Bola Raymond Olubuwale, and this is The Scoop. Born August 24th, 1968, in Ann Arbor, Michigan, was a technically four-division world champion named James Nathaniel Toney. Mr. Lights Out to his opponents. Toney was a star athlete and received multiple post-secondary school scholarship offers for football in multiple positions. That's something that I have never, well, I shouldn't say never seen, but is actually rather rare. Not only did he get the scholarships to multiple schools, but in multiple positions. He was that much of an athlete. But he is quoted as saying, "I wasn't a team player. I wasn't very good at taking orders. So I went into boxing," which only makes sense. Toney had a brief but great amateur career where he amassed 33 wins, with 32 of them coming away of knockout, and only 2 losses. Then he had enough and needed to get paid. So, October 26, 1988, James steps into the squared circle as a professional against Stephen Lee, which ended up in a technical knockout in the second round. And then a star was born. From here, for his next 46 fights, he went undefeated with 2 draws.
Wow.
Of which he avenged rather convincingly. Like nobody stood in his way. May 10th, 1991, James Toney, in his 27th fight, he is now a 20-1 underdog against Michael, second to none. This sensation was walking into the ring with for his 7th defense of his IBF middleweight strap. There was some heated trash talking prior to their fight, like Toney usually does. Toney angered Nunn with constant trash talk, and Nunn promised that he was going to give him a beating. I am going to punish him, is actually what he said. I'm going to enjoy punishing this guy. Again, is actually what he said. This was very much the case for the first 5 rounds. And then, where Nunn fought beautifully, literally beautifully, Nunn, he was expected to run all night, but instead he stood a great deal and just outboxed Toney. He would beat him from close quarters. Like, he wasn't overly elusive. He blocked a lot and just came back with a lot of punishment. At the end of the 5th round, Toney came back to his corner and told his trainer, he's tiring. I can hear him breathing like a freight train. I'm going to step up the pressure. And that he did. By the 7th round, Nunn was ahead on all 3 scorecards convincingly, but Toney was getting to him, and he was starting to tire. It was visible how much he was tiring. So, by the 11th round, Toney all but lost his contest on points. So, Nunn gets caught with a big left hook and dropped like a bad habit. Nunn makes the count only to endure more punishment, and that was just not necessary. And he hits the canvas after the series of right hands. The ref calls the fight. The great Michael Nunn is now second to Toney. 3 fights later, December 13th, 1991. This is exactly how often he was fighting, right? From May to December, he had 3 fights. Toney decided to unify a unification fight with Michael, the body snatcher, McKellen, for his IBF strap and Mike's WBA strap. Because Mike had a mandatory challenger in Steve Collins for his WBA strap, he was actually stripped of his title, and the fight was then just for Toney's IBF strap. A back and forth dance, which resulted in a draw. 4 fights after that, these 2 legends are back at it, and this time Toney walks away with a W for his efforts. So, 2 fights after that, Toney is back in the ring against another future Hall of Famer in Iran Barkley, which he made look easy. I haven't watched that fight yet, but I sort of can see the styles clashing, and I could sort of see it because Toney is the master of inside fighting and counterpunching. So Barkley wasn't overly elusive. He was just balls to the wall, aggressive. So I could see it. I could see it. All three judges gave Barkley 1 round at the time of the stoppage in the 9th round. It was a one-sided shellacking. November 18th, 1994, Toney steps into the ring for his 47th dance against none other than our main man, Roy Jones Jr. Ring Magazine had Toney ranked number 2 for the pound for pound and had the man himself, Roy, ranked number 3. Coming into the fight, Toney was known for struggling with his weight, but he always made weight, so I'm not too sure why this was an issue. But he walked into camp 207 pounds and made weight at super middle at 167 pounds. So he dropped 40 pounds getting ready for this fight. He went in, and when he weighed in 167 the day before for the weigh-ins, the following day when he walked into the ring, he was already 15 pounds heavier. He was 182 pounds. Roy, in contrast, walked into the fight, weighed in at 168, put on 10 pounds, walked into the fight at 178. Now, the fight was a one-sided boxing lesson. It was Roy's footwork made the night look just easy. Because try as Toney did to entice Roy to actually stand and exchange, he just wouldn't. There was a whole lot of heat, a whole lot of talking going on prior to this fight. There was a lot of bad blood. Toney was going to finish him. And the genius that he is played it beautifully, got him so riled up and so hot, and just picked him apart from the outside. This is what boxing is supposed to look like. Roy was playing with him. And in the 3rd round, Roy feinted a big hook. Okay? He didn't throw it. He just threw it out there. Like just posed almost. And then Toney goes off and imitates him by posing. Only thing is, as Toney imitates him, Roy catches Toney with a quick left hook. He stumbles back. He lands on his ass. Knockdown. All I can say is, wow. This is the great James Toney that's being played with like a beginner. That's who I'm talking about. That's what makes him great. After the defeat of Toney, or after this defeat, Toney dusted himself off and moved up to light heavyweight to face against the man they call the Mongoose, Montel Griffin. Actually, they call him Ice. His friend Chris Johnson calls him Mongoose. They're fighting for the IBF strap at light heavyweight. This was a jaw-dropping fight for me because James Toney, by my assessment, was the greatest inside fighter going. He easily. Montel beat him at his own game. This definitely showed me cracks in his game. James was a much taller, longer reach, and yet fought inside the pocket, fought small, and tried to counterpunch against an even better counterpuncher. This Olympic silver medalist, controversially, counterpunch like no other. And James lost that fight. I was slack-jawed because I really didn't follow Montel prior to this. Now, once again, James goes back to the grindstone and amasses 10 straight fight win streak. And along the way, he ends up picking up the World Boxing Union light heavyweight title and their cruiserweight strap too. Only to go up against the Ice again. And this time with my buddy Egerton Marcus in the corner at the helm. It was more of the same, and Montel walked away with, again, another unanimous decision. He just had his number. But mind you, these fights are seen as controversial, and for the life of me, I don't understand why. Because in watching it, I'll be talking about Montel. Actually, I think I'm going to talk about him tomorrow. And I'll discuss these fights in greater detail. To me, it was clear James lost that fight, lost both these fights, and had a great deal of difficulty adapting to the style. But we'll see. 2.5 months later, Tony is back in the office against his familiar foe in the body snatcher, Mike McCallum, for the vacant WBU cruiserweight title. And he walks away with more hardware for his collection, for his efforts. His very next fight, which is just under 3 months, on May 14th, 1997, was against Drake Thadze for the International Boxing Organization light heavyweight title. But Tony came up short. Tony came into this fight 4 pounds overweight. And I think this is the only time in his whole career that he came in overweight, even though, like I said, he blows up in between fights. So only Drake's was fighting for the title because he didn't make weight, and he won it. Drake beat him. The very next month, June 14th, he's back in his office again, facing Steve Lidl for the International Boxing Organization cruiserweight title, and then he wins that. Like, honestly, the trophy keep that this guy must have in his house must be enormous. But he won it. Now, I don't know if you are counting, but this cat in 7 months lost a world title, won another title, only to lose it again, only to win another title in 7 months. Yeah, that has to be a record of some sort. In Tony's next 16 fights, he amasses a record of 14 wins, 1 draw, and 1 no contest against John Ruiz. And in that story, it was because, that was a heavyweight. That's when he went up to the heavyweight division, fought for a world title, and got busted for performance-enhancing drugs.
Ah.
But yeah, by that time, Tony was dancing with the big boys, and he was in the heavyweight division. So he's still 5'10". This is the guy who's 5'10", fought at 160 at one time, and now is still 5'10", and he went up to as heavy as 240 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, Tony was he was a heavy boy. From here on in, Tony's career was nothing like it he had started when he was great. I still tip my hat to him because naturally 5'10" middleweights moving up all the way up to dance with the big boys, and more than that, held his own on the world stage. Like, there's not much you could say. Not much you could say about the guy. The guy was able to get up to the big boys and literally hang with them, and technically won a world title. Now, Tony had some more notable names on his resume as victims, such as Bobby Gunn, Evander Holyfield, and Dominic Quinn. But he did taste defeat twice against the Nigerian Nightmare, Samuel Peters, and had a controversial no contest against Hasim Rockman in their second contest, where, due to an accidental headbutt, Hasim's left eye had blood pouring down into it, and the fight was called by a third round. In the rules dictate that within the first 4 rounds, if there's an accidental headbutt, it has to be deemed accidental, though. That stop, and the fight has to stop. The fight never existed. It's a no contest. Now, especially early in his career when he was a middleweight and even a light heavyweight, James was nothing shy of impressive. Later in his career, he became a heavyweight. He was reduced to more of a sideshow, but he still was decent, but more of a sideshow. He did okay, but he looked a lot better in the lighter weights and and weight classes. This legend was handed his first defeat at the hands of the man, which is a testament for exactly how amazing Roy truly was at middleweight and light heavy. I can't say enough about the very fact that he did what he did. He showcased exactly the weakness in a guy who had 47 wins and no losses. 47 opponents couldn't figure him out. Roy did. That's my show, folks. And if you like the show, please hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget the notification bell. It's your boy Bola, and that's the scoop.
Awesome show, Ray. Thanks very much. And I guess we'll see you tomorrow night.
That works. See ya.